Good morning and welcome to another daft o'clock in the funky mental verse. Sleep apparently is a bit of an issue at the moment, so either way I thought I'd come out and put the camera on and have a little rant and a ramble about a few things that have been going on lately in mainly the UK and watching what's going on through Europe in the Anglosphere. And the last few days I've been inwardly reminiscing really and thinking about things and looking at patterns. I think Simon from History Debunked was talking about the war on noticing and pattern recognition being marginalized and labeled as if it's some sort of psychological disorder, not allowed to happen, not allowed to see things, not allowed to witness things. So I was looking back and considering what I'd actually witnessed and how fucked up it's got, relative anyway. And I'm not going to say that in the 70s it was better. It was very different. I can't remember much of the early 70s, but mid-late 70s was, when I was growing up, was very, let's say, different. We were culturally, I don't know, it was still strange. I'd like to say I had a functioning family life, but it was, I suppose to some it may have been, but relatively it didn't seem that way to me. And we were, I guess, just free to do whatever we wanted to do. And I spent most of my time just out looking for stuff to do, because there wasn't stuff to do. There was not, I can remember the microwave coming in, and I don't know, when was the Walkman and music? Christ, that was the tape players and all that sort of mumbo jumbo. Before we got to anything digital, games consoles and that sort of thing. There was Atari. I remember playing the first Space Invaders. That was a lot of fun in the little village cricket ground. My dad used to play in there, and I used to go in there and play the Space Invaders game. I used to really enjoy it. When would this be? 79, I guess? Not sure. So the first sort of incursion into the digital games came in then. But of course, electronica came in at the same sort of time, so the music changed, and the whole thing started to change through the 80s. And I think the first, taken aside from my going off the rails, like many, I guess, I suppose 14, no fixed abode for quite a few years. Thatcher bringing in the poll tax and the NFA. If you were no fixed abode, you didn't have to pay it. I think when I turned 18, I went to vote, and I couldn't, because Thatcher removed the right to vote if you didn't pay the poll tax, which made me chuckle at the time. I thought it was just a right anyway. But no, you can take the rights of people to votes off of them because they haven't paid a tax, which turned out to be illegal anyway. But that was the beginning of this champagne socialism, this whole notion of this. And then I was kind of working for my parents at this time, 16, I think, 17, and met a few people then that were owner-operators. They were doing their own businesses. They were doing very well for themselves. And I think it would have been about 89 that I saw the first capitulation, let's say, of what would it be? Entrepreneurs, people that were self-employed in a sort of labour market. They, I can't remember quite what happened, but I know that there was quite a few. What were they? Drivers of heavy machinery and this, that, and the other. They got crushed out. A few companies ran and became monopolies almost in the that would have been maybe early 90s. And we were doing quite a bit of work at this point for local councils, which still existed. I was liaising with local councils quite a bit, local council offices, and what I was doing as an independent company, and working with insurance companies too, locally. And I guess this changed late 90s, would have been late 90s, where local trades no longer had a say. The standing joke was it's all backhanders, but it's always been backhanders, hasn't it? It's always been jobs for the boys. But I was watching a funneling of this ability, the promise in the 80s with all of this like champagne stuff. You can make a lot of money. You could if you were dodgy. You could if you were sell your gran. You could. There were quite a few people doing that, but it was immoral. And that was where I guess I had this little issue with morality and being honest, or trying to be honest, trying to be real, trying to be reasonable, so that it didn't weigh on your conscience. But that didn't really help too much in the old world like that. Same with having an open mind to conspiracy theories and reading about all of this stuff and spending a lot of time thinking about it. I talked before about antediluvian, pre-diluvian history and all that was going on there, and being involved in, let's say, aliens and extraterrestrials, Von Daniken, Gift of the Gods, Chariots of the Gods, and all this sort of stuff. I guess I was mid-teens, late teens when I started to read this, and it opened the mind. The Mayan, the Incan, the Nazca, Peru, all of that area, this lost technology, this idea of ancient civilizations by ancient astronauts, which came in a little bit later on. But the concepts were there if it didn't make sense. So I lived a lot of that time by asking questions that were contrary to what most people thought were normal, and watching things that were happening that most people thought were normal, but they didn't seem very normal for me. They didn't, and if you asked a question about it, you got told you were something or other else and marginalized. So this whole, I mean, I know I'm not the only one who's had these experiences. So this whole timeline just moved forwards through from the 90s, I guess. It really started to break down for what I could see late 80s, from what the old offered to what the new is bringing in, digitalization and all of these things. Again, I'm not going to say anything's wrong with that. It was just a progression of a timeline. But what I saw was this capitulation, almost like Black Friday, Black Monday, whatever, Wall Street crash. These economic squeezes. We've seen this across the world with the economic war on things, and the way that the financial system's used to capitulate and to garner a little bit more control and maintain power and enforce this idea of scarcity, lack, and debt, all of which are a story, a narrative, but they're believed. So as long as people believe them, they can keep running with them, and away we go. And we're in this capitalism, this corporate world of degradation. It's moving, it just takes away any value that the human has, and basically bringing them into this, what would be a transhumanistic narrative, which we've seen been playing out for quite a wee while. I mean, from 2001, when quite a few people around the world watched a few buildings pop and fall down. 3, most people think it's 2, but 3 came down. And anybody that doesn't know about Building 7, have a quick look at it. But 3 came down, and the storylines about it. I think I read once that NIST, the National Institution for Science and Technology, that was awarded the the research case to have a look at what actually happened and how they fell down, had something like 5 million in the funding. And I think it was Monica Lewinsky's Clinton, was it Clinton or Bush? I can't remember. That little what would we call it, fellatio affair, had something like 50 million in funding for that one. The discrepancies are just crazy in the way things work. Lots of money for one thing, no money for another, and all of a sudden we've got a theory that's been argued by the architects and engineers all over the world for years, and yet the mainstream narrative is maintained by so many. I spent so long trying to speak to people about the discrepancies in physics, just the fucking common sense of it, and yet got mainstream tactics thrown back at me all the time. What was spouted on the BBC, or what was spouted by so and so to keep the calm. And I think, again, with a lot of this, a lot of us would have experienced this ourselves as we've gone through questioning things you're not allowed to question. The war on noticing, the conspiracy theory that was what CIA coined. What was that? The Kennedy assassination, I think it was. And I'm using these terms, these words. I mean, there's a lot more conspiracy theory out there. I'm not gonna jump into that a lot. I mean, I think I mentioned Ascension Glossary and reading a bit of that. Did I mention it in one of these videos? I think I did. God is real, reincarnation is physics. I think I did. Maybe it was last year I talked about this. Awful lot more in there if anybody's interested in looking at it all. But we went through into the 2000s, and these things happened, and we ended up with this war on terror, which is against an invisible enemy, which seems to have no goalposts. Who's the enemy? Who's this invisible enemy? And how often is the goalpost changed on exactly who that enemy is, this terror? Be it a virus, which is from a germ. All of these things were mainstreamized. They were brought in to be real. Again, we can talk about all sorts of different stuff with regards to this, but there was two theories at the time, and one of them won, the same as Darwinism, that one of them won. Now, is that fact? Well, yeah, if you talk to most people, they would say yes, it is. Because it's been peer reviewed, because it's been agreed upon, because it's the social norm, because that's what people want it to be. It keeps everybody happy to believe these things. But there's always that posit of what if everything we've been told was a fucking lie? And inside there's a freedom, assuming that you don't need to hold on to, what was it, it's early in the morning, man, I'm losing words. It's not idiocracies, it's idiosis, the opposite of gnosis, idiosis, where an external belief is given to you and you believe it to be true. It's the exact opposite of gnosis, where it's an innate knowing, the basis of knowledge, gnosis. Idiosis, the opposite of that. So we've all been fed this all of our lives, and we've been told that this is what you've got to believe. And then we hit the 2020, don't we? I mean, there's a lot of stuff happened in between, the weapons of mass destruction, the invasions here, invasions there, what's going on here, what's going on there, the psyops, the false flags, the white swan events, and all of this fear, propagation, prevalent. No, what's the word? Prevalent? No, pervasive, insidious. All of these notions that are being pushed. And then we get to, as I say, 2020, and the world shut down by words. And honestly, my hands went up. I thought, yes, people are going to see now. And yeah, that watching what happened and living through that madness, that fear-filled societal upside downism, where this was happening all over the place, and pots and pans, and just absolutely mental, and you couldn't ask a question. Now at this point I was consultant and teaching as well, doing a few things with regards to health and safety. And one of the specialities I had, or one of the things I'd done, because I was working a lot in confined spaces when I was younger, was the use of masks. And they brought in this mandate where you had to use masks, and it went against everything, all of the rules and all of it, just forgotten. And nobody asked a question. I was working in 2012 as a site manager and a health and safety guy on site, and my background with a lot of this is I'm down to earth, and when I was younger, we didn't have health and safety. We had common sense, and we did whatever we needed to do to get the job done, and it got the job done. And you looked after yourself, and things went wrong every now and then, but it was always thought through. It wasn't like this nurse state where you got to risk assess it. It was risk assessed in here. The amount, there's some dodgy times I did some dodgy stuff to get the job done, but the job got done and all was good. So I was working on this site in 2012, and again practicing health and safety at the time. And I don't mind openly admitting that that's what I did for a bit, but from an old school perspective, where compliance with the law did not mean that you had to. What would I say? Bend over backwards for it. You could get the job done and still tick boxes. And we got shut down effectively. We were working for a subcontractor. We were a subcontractor working for a main contractor at the time, which is one of those big boys. Rhymes with Marillion. Let's call them that. I also worked with them in at the main spy headquarters in the UK, building one of their sites, and watched what was happening there with regards to the funding, the way that it was all working. I think it was £30 to unbox an item, every item, and this ended up costing 3, 4, 5 billion. I'm not sure. It was supposed to be 300 million. It flew off through. It didn't matter. Money didn't matter. It just didn't matter. And I'm watching this happening, thinking, how? Who's signing this off? So then 2012 comes, and we get a visit by the health and safety executive who decided to close the site down and blamed Marillion. But Marillion didn't have any problem. They actually won. They blamed us as a subby, and this is against all of the legal stuff. But no, because they've got some whatever's going on. That carried on, and all of a sudden now the only thing that I had that was semi-solid was completely gone as well, which is a blessing really, because now it's legality as well that I was aware of. I hadn't looked at this before. I'd stayed well away from all of this ideology, this government stuff. But now I'd been, let's say, studied to a certain degree in legislation, regulation, statute, law, and watched what happened. Watched what happened at the total disregard, scant regard, and the way that the system can just overwrite and rule out human rights based on whims and push them through as mandates, which have got zero authority over the man of the land or the people of the country. It only has authority over an employee, a subordinate. Yet people don't know, so people carry on. So we've got these systems, as I alluded to before, two-dimensional paper with two-dimensional rules, ruled by three-dimensional people, creating rules willy-nilly, and the ones that can create the two-dimensional digits now, not so much paper, can do whatever they want, and yet the people still aren't paying attention. We're watching it currently, and over the last 30 years, I've witnessed a complete reversal of the first 20 years, 30 years of my life. Watched it be unwound, unraveled, storylines and narratives change in real time, like a reset is happening, a rewriting of history. And I'm sure others may well be aware of this to whatever degree they are, if not well into this. But it's a rewriting of history. It's a changing of timelines that are ongoing in real time. The extrapolation of what happened in 2020 when it was awarded prizes for saving so many people, and historically then that will be taken forward. So in 20 years' time, assuming it continues as it does, which I doubt very, very much, the next generation will be informed about what happened here as if it was real. And how many people will be there to tell them that it wasn't, considering how much now is being shut down, how many rights are being shut down, how much is being censored, how many people can speak, watching what's going on in the UK currently. And if you're a certain ethnic or a certain minority, you can do whatever you want. But if you're another world minority, you're going to prison for 3 years instantly, removal of jury trials for anything less than 3 years. And all of a sudden, there's a lot of 2 to 3 year sentences being handed down within days. How much sense does this make? So I'm watching this unfold as we're going on, and I'm not going to get angry about it. The rage is obviously inside, and it can be understood. I don't see a solution. I don't see a way that this plays out without a click of our fingers on something higher, fixing something, or a change of heart on a global collective base. That could happen, that's a possibility. Or more likely is a rise in morality and the stamping down of that which is immoral. But that requires a political will. And is it coming? Well, it's coming in the form currently of anger, rage, which is the formality. I mean, don't get me wrong, the basis of morality is going to come in through there. There has to be a change. The life that people were used to, the life that people want to go back to, is fundamentally shifting. Anybody that is unable to see that is a little bit blind. And I'd like to think that there is a peaceful solution. In fact, from 21 to 25, I was spent trying to fronting a peaceful solution, which required a choice of the public, the people, to choose a different path, to honor themselves, to honor their value, to honor their worth, to reevaluate selling freedom to humanity. What a joke. It was, that didn't work. Not in the way that it may have. It was an option that appeared, that gave a pathway that, through a choice, through a mutual agreement, the world's peoples could actually decide to readdress things and reevaluate, let's say, the whole system. Everything on the planet is owned by the human. To give it ownership to other people is ridiculous. The land isn't owned by anybody, yet to have title deeds and all of these contracts is ridiculous. It's absurd. It's immoral. So we could choose to change that, but in 4 years and then being demonized, it just showed the resistance to actually putting down ego, putting down differences, and choosing a common core. Now, perhaps the current situation in the Anglosphere is forcing a common core to be chosen. I was watching the Protestants and Catholics in Ireland putting down their differences because now they have a common enemy. Well, immorality is the common enemy. Not a people, but in immorality, the people are just playing it out. And this is bringing something very raw, very real, very ignoble to the surface. And it's a fascinating period of time. Anyway, little rant, I don't know, 7 o'clock in the morning. Much, much love.